All right, we are live with safehome.org, and today we're learning how to travel safely over the summer or really any time of the year. I'm Rob Gabriel, home security expert with safehome.org, and we're here with former SWAT commander and now owner of Survival Response LLC, Gene Petrino. How you doing, Gene?
Doing fantastic. How you doing, Rob?
Doing great, thanks. Yeah, and so like always, we'll be doing live Q&A throughout. So if you have any questions at all, drop those in the chat at any time. And yeah, with that, we will get started. Looks like we already have some viewers coming in. So please let us know you're here in the chat. Would love to hear from you. So Gene, all right. So what are some of the things that people should be thinking about, travelers should be thinking about to stay safe, whether they're traveling abroad or staying, domestically, they're leaving for the summer and want to kind of like keep safe and secure?
Well, I think everyone gets too comfortable that it's a vacation time, they're relaxed, it's going to be fun, and those things are all true, but you can't disregard your safety for that. So kind of keeping your head on a swivel and just paying attention to your surroundings is really, a good start to having a good vacation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, keeping your head on the swivel, always important, right? Kind
Yeah.
of like looking over your back a bit, but not of course living in
Yeah,
paranoia, right?
it's you don't have to be paranoid. It's about
Mm-hmm.
being prepared. It's about just being aware of what's going on around you, and most of the time you're going to have a great vacation. You're not going to have to worry about a lot of things, and you shouldn't. But at the same time, you just can't disregard everything, thinking that everywhere is safe and it's a vacation, so it's going to be fun. Danger is always lurking somewhere, so you just got to be careful. But definitely don't let it ruin your vibe for the vacation.
Right. Yeah, of course. And so do you what's one of the biggest mistakes that people make when traveling that puts them at risk? Can you think of any like what like number one mistake?
Well, they don't. The biggest mistake that I see people doing is that they don't kind of do some research on the areas that they're going. Going to the State Department's travel advisory website if you're going out of the country, things like that, or just understanding the layout of a city that you're going to and understanding, where things are in relation to where you're going to be visiting. You really need to know what you're going into, and it's also fun. You get to learn things when you preemptively take a look at your area that you're visiting. You might find hidden gems that you didn't know about. So it's not only about understanding the layout, understanding where you should and shouldn't go, but it's also you might discover something that you didn't expect and make the vacation even better.
Yeah, I can see that. So when people are out exploring and maybe finding new areas, how do they stay situationally aware without becoming paranoid?
Well, you always want to, just watch people and first thing definitely is trust your instinct. If you
Hmm.
feel like you walk into an area and you just feel uncomfortable, you probably want to leave. Our instincts are usually spot on, and if you're getting a bad feeling about something, it's not worth going into those areas.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, just really just paying attention um, to your surroundings, not getting so wrapped up in your, looking at your phone all the time, or not really paying attention to the people around you and just looking at the pretty architecture or whatever area you're looking at. Look at the people too. Look for people that are just, clearly looking at you as a target, because people will project those intentions if you're paying attention to it. You can see it.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. We have some people joining the chat here. So hi, Simone, Andrew, hello. Senior Living is here, Sherry, and we have a couple questions already. So let's go ahead and get these answered if we can. So this one comes from Sherry, and she asks, is the implementation of Real ID playing any role in keeping summer travel safer? Do you happen to
I
know
think
anything about that?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it just helps track, who's traveling where, and it just keeping, it's nice to know who is on the um, form of transportation. If you're taking a train, a bus, planes, things like this, when you're having to use Real ID, there's just better tracking of who's there, and I think it's just a better option. So I think it does make a difference.
Hmm. We have another one here. This is from Senior Living. They ask, is there anything we need to consider when traveling abroad, considering the conflicts going on internationally? And we'll talk more about, traveling abroad too in a bit here. We'll want to unpack some more like strategies and tactics to stay safe. But I guess this is kind of high level. We're going abroad. maybe certain countries we probably shouldn't visit, or I'll let you take this.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where the State Department's travel advisory comes in. You really want to pay attention to that. And they have different risk levels that you can look at. But you know, even if there's a threat level that's kind of high for a country, doesn't mean the entire country is an issue. You might just be, there may be a segment of the country that's unsafe. I've traveled to Brazil many times, and sometimes it's marked as being very dangerous. However, the areas that I go are just as safe as anywhere in the United States. So it
Mhm.
really, you have to do your research again. It's just trying to understand what's going on. And if you know people in those areas, that's even better. You can talk to them directly and find out what the story is.
That's right. Yeah, and I think it's best not to ever, take hearsay as gospel. I've been in certain countries abroad where I
Mhm.
felt safer in certain cities than I did back home in some of the bigger cities here.
Yeah.
So it really is, very situational.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Absolutely.
if you talk to people, sometimes I spoke to somebody from Canada, and they're like, "Is it true that you walk outside and there's guns everywhere?" And I go, "No, United
Yeah.
States is not like that." So the perception sometimes is distorted, and it goes both ways. You might think that a country is unsafe when actually it's a very safe country. Just like I said, I can speak to Brazil specifically. Been there a lot of times, and it's
Mhm.
a safe country. It really is. There's just areas I would not travel in.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. We have a couple other questions here. We'll get to those in just a bit. So kind of like brass tacks, we're flying abroad, say we're going to like Paris or somewhere in Italy. We're getting off the plane, getting into our Uber or like whatever the ride share is over there. What are some ways to stay safe kind of moving around within cities abroad?
Well, again, this comes to doing everything on the front end of the vacation before you even leave. Look at how the airport is laid out. Where are the rideshare pickups or the taxi pickups? Is it safer to take a taxi as opposed to taking a rideshare program? Sometimes you don't have the option. Sometimes there are no rideshare and it's only taxi systems.
Hmm.
So also learning about what are they allowed to charge and what they aren't allowed to charge. A lot of the airport information will list that. So if you research your airport, it might tell you what the cost is, so that you don't get ripped off by the people that are going to be transporting you. But again,
Hmm.
also know what's the distance between where you're staying and the airport, things like that, so you have an idea of where you're going. It's really the best travel advice is always going to be do the research before you leave. And again, it can, you don't have to make it the stressful thing. It can be a fun thing. Oh, where am I going to go? And how close is this going to be? Is it going to take a lot of time to get from the airport to the hotel or the resort or wherever you're staying? It's
Hmm.
just good information to know.
Sure. Yeah. And I imagine too, it depends on like how you like to travel and who you're traveling with, maybe, because I think when you're younger and you're traveling solo, say you're backpacking, you don't mind the little extra adventure by hopping in
Sure.
maybe a questionable taxi. But when you have your family and kids with you, especially like kids, you want to do that research and that due diligence up front and
Yeah.
know what you're getting into
Yeah.
always.
Yeah, but I mean, and again, and you're very vulnerable when you're not in a group. So if you're
Mhm.
traveling solo, you want to make sure you do the research as well. But you might be willing to stay in a hostel as opposed to a nicer hotel. Hostels aren't quite as safe. However, that might be more adventurous and might be more fun, and they're not all
Mhm.
bad. So yeah, I agree with that. But always the research up front is really the best thing to make things easier for your trip.
Yeah, that's actually a great segue too. You mentioned hostels and hotels. What are some red flags like when stepping into like your room for the first time? Things you should be looking out for, that sort of thing.
Well, it actually starts even before you're stepping into the room. It's when you're at the hotel, or the hostel, wherever the building itself.
Hmm.
Is it well lit? Is it in a decent area? Is does it look like it's unkempt? Things like that. What kind of greeting are you getting from the people that are there? Are they professional, or are they, sketchy? You'll get a feeling. This all comes back to, again, trusting your instinct. Does it seem safe? Does it not seem safe? But lighting is a huge thing. If there's not enough lighting, if it looks like it's just kind of run down, that means that if it's run down, it may not have the best intention for security, which puts you at a little bit more risk.
Mm, right. We have another. This is not so much a comment, but a recommendation. Not so much a question, but a recommendation. My says, I highly recommend a pickpocket proof fanny pack or bag if traveling to high pickpocket areas. My partner was cased by a pickpocket in the Porto subway, but she had one and nothing was stolen. And I've actually traveled with that sort of thing as well. Kind of hides underneath the shirt. It's got a little zipper. So if someone gets in your pockets, they're not getting your passport, right?
Yeah.
Your cash and that kind of thing. But anything on this at all?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually, definitely a very smart thing to do. Try not to, carry only what you need. Don't carry your actual passport, make a photocopy of it. You can keep that with you. So if they
Mhm.
steal that, you aren't losing your actual passport. It makes it a little bit easier. But yeah, a lot of products out there that are anti-pickpocketing, and those things are really good. Try to keep everything in front of you. If it's behind, if in your back pockets are a lot easier to take than things in your front pockets. Um, when it comes to this, avoid the large crowds, don't let people get too close to you. Don't be afraid to say step back or put your hand out to keep them at arm's length. You don't want them getting right up on you. And
Mhm.
there's a point where you want to be polite to everybody. At the same time, you have to keep your distance to stay safe.
Sure. Where would you recommend carrying certain things like passports and the cash that you have with you when you're, say, traveling from country to country and you can't leave it in the safe at the hotel? Where on
Yeah.
your person or backpack?
So I always carry it, usually in some kind of hidden, body strapped, like we're talking about the anti uh, uh, pickpocketing things. I usually keep it under my
Mm,
shirt,
okay.
things like that, where it's very difficult to get, things that you can't cut. Usually they're cut resistant. That's where I will typically carry things. It's just easier that way. It's just much easier to keep it, on you than as opposed to in a backpack where if they steal
Yeah.
your backpack or I mean, if you're standing in line and you're not paying attention, they can unzip it. You're not going to feel it. They're going to reach in there and look through your stuff and you won't even notice it. So keeping
Yeah.
it on you and up close to you is really the best thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And there's certain situations, whether it's like a train or a bus, where you actually have to be separated from your
Yep,
backpack or luggage at some point. And so
exactly.
that's really smart to kind of keep that on you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
We have another question here. This is from MD. They ask, you may touch on this, but do you recommend bringing any extra security devices you can use in your hotel room?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So there's a lot of vulnerabilities with security in hotel rooms or Airbnbs and wherever you're staying. So, having door alarms, they look like little door stops. And you just put them in front of the door, and if the door opens, it's going to activate the alarm. So if someone's trying to break in while you're there. Um, when it comes to like you had mentioned hotel safes, they're
Mhm.
they're they're really I don't want to say worthless, but they are not good.
Mhm.
Um, they're usually very simple to open up, even if you
Mhm.
don't know the code. When they're locked, it's there's there you can YouTube it, you'll find all kinds of ways. So traditionally, what I'll do is I'll put maybe a little bit of cash in there, and then the rest of it. If you want to, you can take things like clips, like these little office clips, put your
Mhm.
money or your passport and put it anywhere like on the back of a curtain in the room. You
Yeah.
just flip it on there. They're not going to see it. But if they go into the safe, they might think they got, a little bit of money and they'll leave and not search too hard. But there's a lot of places you can hide things inside of a hotel. The only problem with that is you might forget where you put it. So be
Right.
careful with that. But yeah, there's a lot of devices. There's lock devices that you can buy. That you can put on the doors that will help people from opening the door up if unless you're inside. All
Mhm.
those things are really really good to have. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great tip by clipping something maybe on the
Mhm.
backside of a curtain.
Yeah.
Just make sure it's not like, shown to the whole street.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah. You got to be a little,
Sure, yeah.
you gotta be
Or,
careful.
behind like the dresser or something like
A
that, I
dresser,
could
yeah.
see.
There's all you can get little magnet hooks, and you can put it in a Ziploc and hook it on the back of something metallic, or there's so many creative ways that you can do things with. But again,
Yeah.
just remember where you're putting it. Don't forget it when you're leaving and things like that. So
Yeah. I wonder actually if maybe a small wireless, security camera, something like this wouldn't be bad to take along, and not even that you're gonna set it up and, like, have monitoring on or anything, but just to maybe keep, like, housekeeping honest or,
yeah.
I probably couldn't hurt. That might go missing though, I don't know.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, I mean, you there anything that you bring, at some point it has its pros and cons, and yeah,
Mhm.
they could just take the camera. They could, in order to run that, you might have to have a computer there. You might have to, you might
Yeah.
you might have other things that you have to use. So I think that there's a point where you're going a little too overboard.
Yep.
But again, we're talking about doing the research up front. If a hotel has really good reviews, and you're going to see people talk. If you read reviews, you're going to see people talk about safety. There's going to be comments in there. I felt safe here. This was such a great place. Staff was incredible. You're looking for all those comments. It was clean. It was, all you want to see all those things. That will make you feel a little bit more comfortable. You don't have to be so paranoid that I'm going to get robbed while I'm here. Not to say that that's going to make it, a guarantee everything's safe, but it does help you understand that I'm at a place that is getting good reviews. The hospitals, hotels don't want you to have bad reviews. They want to make sure that you're safe. So doing
Mhm.
that up front, researching what's safe, what's not, how's the hotel look, that's going to help you.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, and, I would also add to that, it's always smart to do, like, a quick scan of the room for hidden cameras.
Hmm.
That's kinda becoming a problem increasingly, and so the best way to do that is to dim the lights. This is for our viewers, to kinda, like, dim the lights in the room and go around with your phone, your smartphone with a flashlight, and look at things like the smoke detector or certain outlets, or potentially the digital clock that's on the bedside table, and see if you're getting a glare flashing back at you, because all cameras have lenses, and lenses refract light, so, or they reflect light, so you'll see that light bouncing back at you, and there could potentially be a lens or a hidden camera there. So
Yeah.
that's a quick tip for sure.
Yeah, and there's devices you can buy that detect cameras, and they're
Mhm.
relatively inexpensive. They work real well now. They used to be not very good, but the technology's gotten better, and you can take those and just walk around them. Definitely, when you go into any room, you wanna investigate it. You wanna make sure that it's safe, that everything looks, are the windows that open and close, are they locked? Can you lock them? Is there a problem if you can't lock them? You wanna
Mhm.
make sure all that is right on point. So definitely do a search of the room, make sure it's secure too.
Right. Yeah. And so, do you have any like tips on whether maybe you're not traveling internationally over the summer, but you're staying domestically? What are some of the different ways you should be thinking about that trip compared to like traveling abroad? What are some things you should think about?
Well, again, it all starts with, knowing where you're going. Having itineraries are, they're a blessing and a curse. If you're going on vacation to relax and you've got a list of things that you want to do every second of the day, it's not going to be as enjoyable as you might think. But
Mhm.
having an idea of where you want to go, how you're going to get from point A to point B, that they're just simple logistics. Understanding how you have to travel is really, really critical. So
Mhm.
looking at the areas that you're going to, where, like, how do you get to one site from another? Am I going to be going through an area that is sketchy? I don't know. You want to look at those things, but really
Mhm.
just having that plan. Just again, when it comes to travel, the best trips that I've ever taken were the ones that I really spent some time learning where I was going. How do I get there? Where am I staying? What are some of the things I want to be doing? And how to get there, how to get from point A to point B from within that location.
Mhm. Do you have any resources, maybe off the top of your head, that would be like good to look at? Like, do this research on these places that we're going to be traveling to. I know back in the day, it used to be kind of like the guidebooks, like the Lonely Planets and that kind of thing. But now we have the internet, of course. You still have those guides; they're just now digital. Are
Yeah.
there any kind of go-to sources that you use when you're traveling?
Well, I just go right to Google, and I type the area that I'm going in to see what news is going on in that area. I want to
Mhm.
see what is happening in there. Is there civil unrest if it's outside of this country? Well, even inside the country, are there issues going on that might impact the travel? Sometimes you go to an area, you don't know that there's a big festival going on at the same time just by chance, and that's going to impact how you're going to be able to move throughout that area. So understanding that is a big thing. But yeah, I mean, just the internet's is great because there's so much information out there. Google is just doing a basic search of that area
Mhm.
is really probably the best thing. And again, you can look on all the travel sites to see reviews of areas, and all the areas you want to make, go to, the excursions you want to take, or whatever the sites you want to see, you can research those, see the reviews, and see what people are saying.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other great thing about the internet is that you can get a review on everything. You can see what people are saying, and it's not hard to pick the fake reviews out from from the real ones. You can tell when it's
Yeah.
when it's kind of a little too much sometimes. So
Yeah. The fake ones are typically glowing, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
All right. So how about like self-defense tools, like pepper spray or tactical pens? Can you even travel with those? And if you can, do you like recommend anything like that?
Yeah, so pepper spray is not going to be effective unless you're driving through the United States. Then you can.
Hmm.
However, there may be states, and I don't know. There may be states where you can't carry that.
Hmm.
It just depends on the state that you're in. But mostly it's pretty safe to carry. However, in the United States, bear spray is legal, so that's pretty much legal everywhere. So you could probably get away with carrying that, but something to think about. My One of my
Interesting. Yeah.
favorite is the tactical pen. I think those are really good.
Hmm.
They're usually aluminum or steel, and they're just a blunt object. They usually have a pointy tip on them, and they're really good for defense. But
Hmm.
when it comes to weapons, anything can be a weapon. Anything
Hmm.
that you have can be a weapon. You just have to be able to look at an object and say, okay, I can use that plant that's right there, a fire extinguisher, or anything close by. So again, knowing your surroundings when you're walking through an area, just look around and say, oh, okay, if something happened, there's my exits. Here's how I get out of here. And if something happened, what would I do? Can I hit them with something? Can I defend myself?
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, but weapons are very difficult to travel with. But a tactical pen, I've carried one internationally and through the United States, never had an issue.
Sure. Yeah, that pepper spray is or the bear spray is pretty intriguing. I've
Yeah,
seen those things like the big canisters you
yeah,
carry on your hip and you
yeah,
makes
yep.
the big cloud. Is
Oh yeah.
that like, I mean, is there like a certain standard like or a does it like have to be deadly force before you can use it or how does that work? It's
Well,
not a firearm, so.
it's not intended for obviously people, but it's the same thing. It's
Mhm.
just it's a higher concentration of pepper spray, so it's stronger than what is used in traditional pepper spray that you would carry for a person.
Yeah.
But there's no, when it comes down to defense, I mean, you can't just walk up to somebody and spray them. Obviously,
Yeah.
if there's an imminent threat of an attack and you verbalize, get away from me, or if you might not even have a chance if they're attacking you and you just have to spray, then you do it. But
Yeah.
again, when it comes to, the disadvantage with all these pepper sprays that people really like, they don't realize you're going to get a taste of it as well.
Mhm.
So, just keep that in mind. The bear spray is usually pretty good because it shoots a little farther out to give distance, as an advantage for you in a case of a bear attack. But if the wind is blowing, if you're inside and there's air conditioning on or a fan that's in there, it's going to circulate and you're going to get a taste of it. So, it's not a pleasant thing. So you keep that in mind when you're carrying that kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
And again,
And
I always talk about the personal alarms. The little pocket personal alarms are, really good things to have. Those people you want to make noise. Those are really good. They're cheap. Buy them on Amazon or whatever.
that's right. And yeah, MD says, love the binder clip suggestion. She's actually getting ready for a trip. So these are great tips.
Good.
And then Andrew asks, what things should I prepare in an emergency plan before departing for my summer vacation?
So emergency plan on vacation, I would say, first of all, I always carry some kind of first aid, equipment with me. Usually I'm a little more I don't want to say paranoid, a little more
Mm,
concerned about major issues. So like, uncontrolled bleeding, things like that. So I'll usually carry a hemostatic agent. I'll carry some kind of type of pressure gauze,
mhm,
and then just the basics that, I sometimes carry super glue because that's great for wound sealing if you in a pinch, things like that.
mhm,
But just having some kind of first aid stuff on you is good. Also, having knowledge of how to do first aid, knowing basic life saving, how to help somebody if they're choking or if they're in some kind of cardiac arrest or problems breathing, things like that. Those are all great skills that really and truly everybody should have. Very inexpensive training. Some places you can get it for free. But understanding basic care like that is really, really important.
mhm.
So those are some of the things. And again, when it comes down to, as far as an emergency plan, the emergency plan should always be the same. If you're traveling with a group, have certain words or phrases that you're going to use to identify a threat or an issue that you think is a concern, so that you can all move, collectively as a group to get out of that area. You can also, when you're going into area, know where your exits are. At least have at least 2 to 3 points of escape if you need to. And that can be, smashing a window out and going through a window. So understand that having an idea of how to get out of there. The emergency plan, thinking about what kind of equipment to carry. I would carry a battery pack, a charger. Flashlights are incredibly great to have on hand. They're small ones. I like the headlamps, the little ones that are going around your head. And you put them on there because you keep your hands free. Those are great. They're small. They don't take up a lot of space. Those are some of the things that I typically would carry. But that's sort of my emergency plan is just, making sure if I'm traveling solo, it's easier. If I'm traveling with a group, having a plan of what to do if something goes wrong is really the key, and having to be able to communicate that without really people knowing what you're doing.
Yeah. And a lot of the items that you mentioned are very small, and they won't take up much room in your luggage at all or your backpack. So yeah, those are great tips. Hello, Isabel, joining the chat, and Michael. Michael says weapons are everywhere once you know what you are looking for. That's true. Okay, switching gears a little bit. What are some, maybe not like personal physical threats that you might that pose you? What are some scams that could happen? Like what are scammers thinking about doing, and how can you stay safe from scammers?
Well, I mean, scammers aren't always okay. When I think scammers, typically it's international travel. Typically, what especially traveling from the United States anywhere else, it doesn't matter what your circumstances. They see you as a rich American, and you are going to be a target.
Yeah.
So I've traveled where I've had people come up to me, asking, trying to convince me that I should buy them food, and hey, let's go eat together, and they want you to buy them some food. Things like that. The airports are notorious for that. You get a lot of people coming up there. That's one of the scams. You get a lot. I mean, there's just so many pickpocketing scams out there. A lot of people were like, "Oh, well, watch your luggage while you go to the bathroom," or you don't want to, and then they'll steal your luggage. There's just so many different little scams, and the whole idea of doing the preemptive research of before your trip is you're going to learn in these areas what are the common scams that you're going to face. So, because every area is a little bit different, learn what's prevalent in that area. Let's say it's, I don't want to name it. I don't want to say anything about any specific country, but say it's pickpocketing. So, if you're going in that area, know that that's what you have to be looking for people getting close up to you, things like that. So just, those scams. And again, the taxi scams are always a big one where they will double or triple charge you, even though they're not allowed to by law, and understanding what they're allowed to charge you. And you can get away with not getting jammed up with that as well.
Right. Yeah. Then there's that one that happens in Paris and other big cities where someone will come up and put something on your wrist, of obviously maybe to pickpocket you if they can, but if not, kind of say, like extort you for some money because now they gifted you this thing and it costs, $100 or whatever it might be. So, and then there's the language barrier. And so you don't want to, create any tension and make a scene. So a lot of times people just pay up.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing is when you get into a lot of these areas, again, they see you as a rich person and they see you as just having so much money, and that's they just want to get as much out of you as they can. And they will give you gifts. They will have you hold something. They will offer to take a picture for you. They will, there's so many little things that they'll do just to get $5, $10, $20, $30 off of you. And you don't have to pay them for these things. It's just a scam, and they know that, but they'll make you feel bad. They'll yell at you and they'll cause a scene.
Yeah.
Let them, but do your research. If you know that that's a scam up front because you researched it, you can just avoid it, the whole thing. When they walk up to you, just say, get away.
Right. Yeah. There's another common scam too. You might have heard of this one. This actually happened when I was in South America. Someone who I was traveling with, their parents received a call from someone who supposedly had them captive, and they were trying to extort money from the parents. And so when the parents hang up and try to call, in this case, tried to call their son, and the son wasn't answering the phone, oh shoot, it must be true. He must be held
Yeah.
captive. I would do anything for my son. I'm going to go ahead and pay up. That scam happens a lot, and it kind of just, it's especially nefarious because it preys on the fear the parents have because their child is, their loved ones are out traveling abroad and anything can happen. So yeah, that's definitely one to look out for.
And the way you defeat that is, again, talking to, let's assume it's a parent, or it could be a grandparent or any family member,
Hmm.
having the conversation. If you get a call from me, ask them this question,
Hmm.
that only you know the answer to, or and they'll, that's just a qualifier that because they won't have the answer to it. If they don't have the answer, then it's nothing,
Yeah.
and that way they can know right away this is nonsense and it's not going to happen.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's the, and of course, send them a message. If you get the call like that, send them a message saying, hey, I need you to call me right away. I just got a call. I need to know if this is true. Send that. Have different ways. Communication abroad is difficult. WhatsApp is great because it works internationally. It's not, that's one of my go-to ones. But
Yeah.
having those kind of conversations before you leave with your family members is really pretty important as well.
Sure. Yeah. All right. So we have another question here from Maya. Tips for staying safe during a road trip, either in the US or abroad. Great
Well,
question.
yeah, so just having things on hand that you might need. So if you're
Mhm.
traveling through the US, it's all, check to make sure your spare tire is functional. If you have a flat tire, it's kind of bad if you're in the middle of nowhere and you can't do it.
Yeah.
Obviously, know how to change a tire. It's really good to know.
Mhm.
Um, Again, I will always say having one or two battery backups for your phone is just a critical thing. Lights, having flashlights, more than one is preferable. If you're traveling throughout the United States, you have more options as far as carrying a weapon of some sort.
Mhm.
Having food, protein bars, definitely having enough water, things like that in case you get stranded. At least you have some food for a little while. Um,
Yeah.
and some kind of, it's going to be funny to say this, but having an actual physical map is a really big thing to have if you're traveling.
Mhm.
We all get so used to using our phones for navigating from point A to point B, but if you don't have your phone, your battery dies, your phone gets stolen. Having a map is a really good thing. So having the map, being familiar with how to use it. A lot of people don't know how to use a map anymore. So look at your maps, figure out where things are. Those are some of the things that I would recommend. Um, you know,
Yeah.
easy items to have. But if you're on a road trip, you have room to carry extra things. You have room to carry, a case of water. You have room to carry, some kind of emergency equipment, either flares for your car if it gets broken down. Um, a battery, one of those little battery jump machines that you can plug in. If you got a dead battery, you can jump your car. Air, you can inflate your tires with the little machines that you can buy. All kinds of little things like that. Really important to have to make sure you're able to get on your way safe.
Yeah, and I would add to that, make sure you stay fueled up because
Well,
I
yeah,
was
that's
actually, yeah,
yeah,
I was
'cause
traveling not too long ago, coast to coast,
Mhm.
from Miami to the Gulf in Florida, and apparently there's this highway called Alligator Alley,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
which yeah, I didn't know about, but I was on it at like 2 a.m. and
Oh,
like
yeah.
down under a quarter tank of gas, not
Yeah.
like even halfway through it. Now there's no gas stations out there,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I don't know how to
totally.
deal with alligators, so yeah, stay fueled up for sure.
Yeah, don't pet the alligators, that's what we tell you.
Yeah, right. I've heard too you run in a zigzag away from them. That's like how
Yeah,
you
yeah. No, you're done. If they're chasing you, it does like a lot of predators. If you face them, they're not gonna be as prone to attack you, but yeah, they're not very friendly animals. But,
right.
yeah, I mean, being fueled up, obviously, and again, that's the thing is if you're gonna drive, have your car checked out.
Mhm.
I many times if I'm traveling more than a couple 100 miles, I'll take it to the mechanic, say, "Hey, just make sure this is roadworthy, make sure everything's fueled up, make sure the fluids are good, the tires are good." Just have it checked out, make sure there's no underlying issues that you don't know about. Just gives you a little bit more peace of mind and avoid those problems if you're traveling.
Sure, yeah. That was a great question there, Maya.
Yeah.
So what are some of the common mistakes people make when leaving their home unattended to go on their trip?
Well, I mean, we talk about that a lot, right? For home security is
Mhm.
criminals are looking for the easiest targets to hit. So if you've got for those that still get newspapers delivered, having them just pile up, or mail, mail in your mailbox that's just overflowing. Not having lights that are on timers. You want to make sure it looks like you're still there. That
Hmm.
that that there's still people there. If you have a neighbor who's got a few cars, hey, want to use my driveway? Park in my driveway for a little bit while I'm gone. That's a great, if it's a trusted neighbor. Obviously, it's got to be someone you trust, but
Yeah.
let them use that so it always looks like there's a car there. That's home, but giving that impression that this is a lived-in house is really what you want to do.
Yeah.
And obviously, again, we talk about social media. Don't promote that you're going on vacation. Save all the pictures and everything for when you get back. Hey, we just got back from a great vacation. Here's what we did. Talk about it then. But if you're away and someone knows where you're at and it's not hard to find you,
Hmm.
they know the house is empty.
Yeah, especially like a lot of people have very loose connections on social
Oh
media,
yeah.
whether it's like Facebook or Instagram.
Yep.
And it's tempting to post those while you're away because you want to show people, you saved up for that Paris trip or
Yeah.
wherever you're going. And it's hard
Yeah.
not to, but yeah, they will know. They'll know. And it could even be someone like a contractor or someone who's, recently done work on your house. Well,
Oh yeah.
it's like an open invitation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Hmm.
So how, like, can you talk more about like the role that neighbors can play in keeping your house safe while you're gone? So like, um, obviously like they want to keep an eye on the place. And I know another thing is they can pick up your packages.
Hmm.
So it makes it look like someone's home. What are maybe some other ways you can utilize them?
Yeah. Well, first, when it comes to like packages and mail, if you're going to be gone for extended period of time, let's say 2 weeks or more, you can pause those deliveries. That's just just avoid that headache
Mm,
altogether. But yeah, talking to your neighbors and just saying, hey, no one is supposed to be at the house. If there's somebody there, call the police, because no one should be at that house. There's no,
yeah.
let them know that any cars in the driveway, no one is supposed to be there. And it's much better for law enforcement to get notified when it's happening than when you get back and they say, oh, I saw a van there and I figured you had somebody doing work on the house. So just talk to your
Yeah.
neighbors. But again, you have to have an established relationship with your neighbors, just to avoid giving them the wrong information. If there's someone you can't trust, don't tell them.
Yeah.
you know but even if someone that's not a neighbor, having a family friend come over there and check out your house is really good. And the other part of it is, most police agencies will come by and do vacation checks. So if you
Mm,
call the police department and say, hey, do you guys do vacation checks? I'm going to be gone from this state to this state. They will send an officer over there based on availability. If it's obviously a busy day, they won't be able to do it, but they will send someone over there, walk around your house, make sure it's all locked up and secured. So that's another thing you can do.
wow. I never knew that.
Most people
That's
don't.
yeah, that's a great tip right there. That's like
Yeah, not all agencies
where
do it. Some of the bigger ones may not have time. It really does come down to availability. They'll do their best to come out there to keep an eye on it. But also, if they get a call there, they'll know that that there's some suspicious vehicle at a house. They'll know, oh wait, there's a vacation watch on there. That doesn't make sense. That they might give them a little bit faster response time, knowing that that might be a burglary in progress.
sure. No, that makes sense. Yeah, chat, if you guys have any other questions, please drop those. These have been really insightful so far, and I hope you're getting the answers that you're looking for. Senior Living says, wow, I didn't know about vacation checks. Very cool. Yep, that's neat. I live in sort of a smaller town or smallish town. It's not a big city.
Hmm.
So I'm sure our local department has plenty of time to come by, like swing by
Yeah, and they
and
and
take a
they
look.
do. And it gives them, it's something to do, and it's good. They're always in the, a lot of people don't realize that law enforcement drives through neighborhoods all the time. You might not see them, but they'll drive through, and if they've got a place to stop at, they're gonna do the stop, and it's so easy to do. A lot of them just do it and walk around and make sure it's safe, and that's
Sure.
it. So yeah.
Great. Yeah. And what are some things that you personally do before locking up and heading out on like a 2 week trip or like a 3 week trip, something a little bit longer?
Well,
You,
yeah, like I said, I stop all my mail. I stop all
yeah.
the mail. I don't want anyone to have to deal with having to get my mail for me. It's just too much to do that. I make sure with my neighbors we have the discussion about what's there. And like I said, I have a neighbor who has a lot of cars, and I'm like, hey, use my driveway. Park your cars there, no problem with it at all.
Mm,
And they appreciate it. You're doing them a favor, they're doing you a favor. That's good. But I also check my security system. Are my cameras working right? Are my door locks working good? Are all the windows locked up, securely? Do I have everything done? Is my lawn maintenance guys coming on a regular schedule? Are they going to be there? I do all these things to make sure the house continually looks lived in. I test my alarm system to make sure that it's functioning properly. I do some extra locking systems on my garage door. I'll actually physically lock it and disable the automatic garage door opener so that can't be opened up.
Yeah.
Just really just doing a check, just doing a regular security check to make sure it's all working, make sure that everything's functioning the way it should be, make sure that it looks like it's lived in. So make sure the timers are working properly and things like that.
Right. Yeah. Like the timers on the lights that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Right. And inside you get the, the lights that are on timers. You can also get like the fake TV screen that kind of like emits that TV light at night, little flicker through the windows.
Yeah.
That wouldn't hurt to have that. Yeah. A lot of like little things to make your home lived in. I guess that's the point, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Make it look lived in. Right. Okay, great. Yeah, I guess we don't have any more questions. This has been a really great, insightful conversation. I appreciate your time again, Gene.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we will have to do this again at some point soon.
Yep.
All right, everyone. Don't forget to visit safehome.org for all your home security needs. And